Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings and other town updates. A third channel, Blue Hawk Media, is operated by SAU 16 and can be found on Channel 8, with all your school sports, events, and meetings. You can watch Exeter TV online at exeternh.tv, Apple TV, and on Roku. Find us on social media for extra content. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell to get notified about live streams and new content. Tune in to our platforms every other Friday to watch the Exeter Biweekly Report, with recaps of recent events, updates from town departments, and messages from nonprofits in your area. If you head to our website, exeternh.tv, we invite you to sign up to our newsletter to receive monthly updates about new content, upcoming meetings, and more. We'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch Exeter TV and hope that you tune in to our other content as well.
Oh my gosh.
Good afternoon.
That's a
I would
riot.
like to welcome everyone
Keith.
to the Pairpoint.
They can fit.
No, I did.
Whistle.
I brought it in, but I think we're good. We'll just have one.
Welcome to the Pairpoint Park Stakeholders Advisory Committee meeting.
Can I forward it?
We're coming to order. We're coming to order.
You might throw these.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very quickly, introductions, just very quickly around the room so we all know each other. In case we don't know each other, this is a standard in medicine, which is why I do it, that everyone at every team meeting says their name very quickly so that no one says, oh, there's a scrub nurse, I don't know her name, which is an embarrassing thing. So this is why I do it. Suzanne.
Suzanne.
Yeah.
Amanda Kelly.
Jen Martell.
Devin Scarrett.
Mary Teagle.
Judy Rowan.
Steve Jones.
Ann Hohenberger.
Keith Whitehouse.
Dave Short.
Dave Sharples.
Nico Papakostis.
Doug Eastman, president.
And welcome, Doug.
And Mr. Chair, excuse me, it's also important to introduce for folks, this is being videoed and broadcast on TV, so folks at home can all know who we are as well.
And that should put us all on notice to, on our best behavior because folks are watching us on TV.
I'm still putting my stress ball right there.
Public comment, that's first on the agenda always, after an introduction. Hearing no public comment, I'll go on to the agenda items. The approval of the minutes. Anne, I believe you had something about the minutes that you wanted to suggest?
No.
No?
I did.
Oh, you did, Judy?
Yes.
I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. My
For
apologies.
Dave's information, when the chair phrases a motion and somebody says "so moved," would you please put the person saying "so moved" as the one making the motion?
And so did you make
Yeah,
both?
so
Yeah.
I did the "so moved" twice, following his excellent verbiage.
Okay. We tried to reconstruct after the fact.
Yep.
Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
For
So
future.
with those changes, are there any other changes to the minutes? Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I move that we accept them as presented.
Okay.
Second.
First and a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion, none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I'm going to abstain,
Okay.
because I wasn't here.
Yes, okay. And I will take this moment to say that, Suzanne, your opinion is very valued here. But you are an alternate, as is Bill Campbell. And so, unfortunately, we will not have you voting or making a motion or seconding a motion. But you feel free, please, because we are relying on your expertise. So do comment and do speak up.
And if
Let's-
somebody was absent and we didn't have a full quorum,
Yeah, then we could vote her. We could vote her on to the committee for the day. Yes, and the same with Bill Campbell, could become a regular member for the day. Tracking volunteer hours. Jen, this is first on the agenda. You suggested this item. Did you have anything you wanted to say?
No, it was just something I thought of laying in bed one night is if we potentially maybe going after grants of any kind. I know a lot of times on grant applications, they want to know, what you're contributing in kind or whatever. And I think volunteer hours sometimes count. I mean, it all depends on the grant. So I was just thinking, if we're spending time doing this, it might be a good idea just to track it so that in the future, if we need to go back and be like, well, how much time did you spend on this? You're not like, I have no clue. You can sort of have an idea.
Very good idea. So depending on what people think, I can set up and share with the members of this committee and the alternates a Google spreadsheet where weekly you can just note your hours spent. Would folks like that? Any comments?
I have a question. We've got our meeting hours, and then we have our homework hours, so to speak. Right? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and I think my experience with this is limited, but yes, it does count on grant applications, and a ballpark figure does. So, you don't have to get down to the 15 minutes, but, I spent so many hours working on committee work.
And we can figure out meeting hours pretty easy. It's more the non-meeting
Right.
hours that are going to be tricky to, you can lose track of it pretty quickly, so.
Well, in the same vein, then, would expenses count? If any of us made copies or,
No,
Okay.
it's members of the committee and the alternates.
okay.
Yeah.
So, for example, if we're researching plant material, what would be appropriate for a park like this? You might include that?
I mean, I don't know, like, I have not applied for that many grants. I'm kind of hoping somebody else is more
Well, I
knowledgeable
have,
about
and-
this. It was just something I thought, I don't know if you could say, like, what counts and what doesn't count.
That's what my
Judgment
point
call.
was.
Dave would know.
I do. It's some grants, and it's probably limited, less grants than others, allow you to do what's called an in-kind match. So there's cash match where you have to actually spend money. Like, if something costs $100,000 and it's an 80-20 match, cash match. So you have to come up with 20,000. The feds or state brings in 80. Some grants, the only ones really that I'm aware of are the certified local government grants that allow for in-kind matching, where you can count this room, the rental of the use of this room for, like, there's standard pricing out there for every hour. You can charge $200 for the room. I can add up all your time, everyone in here, and it's like whatever the volunteer rate is, times an hour, times, 11 people, and that adds up to some dollar value. And that's called an in-kind match. Generally, you don't see a lot of grants do that, but she's right. They are out there, and we could easily track the hours from the moment you started, from the minutes, who was there, how many, and the length of the duration of that. And I would suspect, since you meet monthly and there's so many of you, you would probably get considerable just in the meeting. Like you add up, 14, 50 times 11, times as many hours as you did, you're probably going to get a significant match.
So,
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Because that is really helpful, and that makes sense to me because I'm involved in other consulting work around digital equity, which is a federal grant, which is big ticket money, but allows for an in-kind donation for the match. So this is making sense to me. The use case for us, I think, is both starts at the meeting, that outside of time, like homework. I can imagine if you engage in research, right? Whether it's about plants or it's about how to engage a community or what have you. Though that seems to be the primary use case for the out of meeting time that you would be worth tracking.
yep,
Does that make sense?
that makes sense. Well, why don't we try it and report back to me, please, how it went after a month. I'll set up a Google spreadsheet. I'll share it all with you, and we'll see how this goes. Yeah. Okay. Committee charge, where are we? Let me bring out my paperwork and the charge. Where we are, and I'm going to direct my comments toward the select board member here. Last meeting, it was the overwhelming sense of the committee that the next step for us is to open up the park visually, at the least. We haven't made any steps beyond that, but that was the overwhelming sense. And I believe I speak for everyone here, is that correct? That in order to get good public comment, the public needs to see what it is that's at stake. And in order to see it, we need to open it somehow visually. And we're going to have a presentation on that at the end of this meeting. So let's not jump the gun. But that's where we are in terms of our charge. It's somewhere along present multiple designs, which is charge number 4, and somewhere along get the input from the committee and from the public. So that is the sense of the committee. However, I'm going to ask Nico, how does this sit with the select board? And I know you can't speak for the whole select board. Yeah.
Can I add a question to that, Steve?
Sure, let's get this question first and then.
Maybe we
okay,
could,
okay, yeah.
okay. So back, Dave, I don't remember when it was that you came before the board. This winter, you had a couple of different options. And at the time, the board had decided there was one option, we're just not doing anything except maintaining the lawn, I think mowing it a little bit, but just minor stuff. To allow the committee to form and to make your suggestions. I think that this is a question to come before the board to answer, but I would keep in mind that there are a couple different things that you'd have to be prepared to answer, and that is, what would you recommend? Are you opening it totally for folks to walk around? And if you are, then we would have to go to Primex, our insurance company, for them to come out from a risk management standpoint to make sure that it is safe for folks to walk around. If we don't do that and somebody is hurt, Primex could challenge any claim because we didn't have them come out there to inspect it. They didn't make any recommendations. So from a risk management standpoint, we would have to do that. Another option that you could consider would be to have it visually available with a different type of a fence so that folks could actually see what the property was, but not be able to, walk around it until you could secure the entire perimeter to the satisfaction of the risk manager. It's not trying to obstruct the public from seeing it, but we need to make sure that everyone's going to be safe. Because right now, the last time I walked through there, I don't think that would be, that's my day job, working in risk management, I wouldn't consider that to be safe. So it's up to the board collectively, but that's my 2 cents.
And I believe, if I may speak for the committee, and correct me if anyone of you thinks I'm not speaking for you, that we will discuss this very shortly in the course of this meeting. We will make an initial proposal, and we will follow that up with details. So the movement we're making is toward making a recommendation to the select board.
Great.
And that recommendation will be somehow to open up the park visually.
Good.
And at that point, we can get public comment, we can get donations going, and that's the direction. So did you have a question for?
Another one about the charge we've been given. We aren't there yet, but I'm thinking about the survey. And just to explain my question a little bit better, I'm not real keen on surveys per se, because the instruments are difficult to write properly, and then you have to tabulate them. But so be it. I would be in favor of doing a sort of survey, maybe a questionnaire, early, and then when we have a quote-unquote final design, somehow present it to the public, like with models or drawings at town hall. Have an open house. So I mentioned this to Steve, but no one else has heard it, so I'm not speaking for the group. But would that be in accord with what you all meant by conduct a survey?
So the charge that the board came up with was, a suggestive start. Like we've done with other committees, if collectively you as a committee or board come up with something that you think is an improved charge and you want to bring it before the select board to consider, I would strongly encourage that, because you as a group are, in the weeds on this. This was a guide for you to start with. So if you feel that that's a better way to get the information that you need, then that's something that you talk about as a group and then bring it before the select board. I know Dave has worked successfully with surveys in the past, with parking surveys and such. I know Bob Glowacki has assisted the communications committee with surveys. So these are two, just off the top of my head, these are two valuable resources for town staff that can assist in suggestions as to how to successfully do a survey. I know the surveys that you've done have been, all things considered for a town. I mean, you've had good feedback. You've had a good number of folks responding. Same with Bob with the communications committee. So, that's up to you folks to decide what you want to recommend to the board. But, what the board wants is we want this to be successful. So if you come up with something that you think is more improved, then please
So, Mary,
let us know.
I think that we can table the matter of a survey
yeah,
for now and
yeah.
bring it up in a couple of months when it's more appropriately.
I agree. I just wanted to,
Okay.
so that we can talk about it, think about it.
Very good.
Right. Here, I wanted to chime in because to go back to this potential recommendation about opening up the park visually, an inclination that Devin have is that presents multiple opportunities to gather diverse kinds of inputs at multiple steps along the way. If right now a charge includes a survey, and as a researcher, I'm a qualitative researcher, but I'm definitely familiar with quantitative research. I'm not here to lecture people. There are benefits and limitations about surveys. I think a survey might wind up being a good idea for us. And there will be limits to only doing a survey. So as we consider the benefits or drawbacks of opening up the park visually, I think it opens up like the opportunity space for this as a committee to recommend possibilities for engaging the public in multiple ways along the way.
Right, and that is part of our charge, is to get public comment by whatever means.
Yep.
Okay. Are we all satisfied here?
Yes.
Okay. You're my guide, and I wanted to thank Judy just briefly for keeping me on task last meeting. So thank you. We didn't get the arrangement of the tables just right, but we can work on that next meeting. Update on a flow sheet, a checklist, a diagram, a Gantt chart. The quick notification is that Mary and I are working on it, and we'll have something to show you next month. Yes. So that's the update. Environmental assessment update. I called I believe it was Joseph Dorset who picked up the phone. And this is regarding the environmental assessment. And I chatted with him, and I said, we're not the people who paid for this. We don't. It was a previous owner who did. You owe nothing to us, but can I assume that everything, especially regarding the leaking underground storage tank, is accurate and complete? His report to me was he can write a cover letter for us, assuring that. I will be on him over the next month to ask him to please do so. The update that Dave and I did some research online, that leaking underground storage tank, which was on Water Street, it was the Gulf Station, now the municipal parking lot. It was there were 5 tanks, and I believe there are 5 tanks, and one of which was leaking, and that was completely removed before 1986. And why do I bring that up? It's because that's when we have the latest information about it. Remediation was done 8 years later, and then monitored for 2 years, and the state closed the case. I'm quite satisfied with that, but I'll follow up on that and let you know when I find out. So that's the environmental assessment update. There's one other.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question?
Yes, please.
On that?
You can call me
so-
Steve.
Steve, I believe we thought there might be a monitoring well on the
Yes.
site. Does that mean that monitoring well we don't need to preserve it, provide access to it, or anything like that?
I don't think.
It can
I don't
just be
believe.
abandoned?
It can be abandoned.
Okay.
And in fact, I think it, for all intents and purposes, has been abandoned.
Yeah. Okay.
So it can be taken out or covered up.
Great.
There's another small bit of news. I have been in touch, as you know, and I'm looking over at Dave Sharples, with Steve Dalton. Steve Dalton is the interim head of water and sewer here in Exeter. I asked him about, well, there's a sewer line there, and there's a water line. In fact, there may be two. There's two, according to the 2020 survey or plan. He said about the sewer service, he believes, he hasn't been able to get into the site, it's been locked, but he believes that it could be just capped. We don't have to claw it back to its source at the main. And I just was investigating because that would be important to me if I were a homeowner. Does it need to be clawed back, or does it need to be just capped? He thinks it's just capped. There is a fire suppression water line, which they believe to be 6 inches on the property, that Elliot Berkowitz, I believe, installed. He has concerns about that. I'll read from this email of Friday, August 9th. I have more concerns about that. I would hate to see all the work go into making that property a beautiful park and have that valve blow off and send all the dirt into the river. So, long and short, Steve and I and anyone else who wishes to be involved are investigating sewer line and water line. Anyone else wish for me to, get you involved here? Or am I going to be the one? I'm happy to be.
I'll give a hand. I'm interested in talking to the fire department to find out if there's some use for it.
Okay. So
I am not interested in helping, but I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
That sounded bad. If you need my help, but that's not my first place that I'd volunteer. However, my question is you mentioned at least 2, maybe more?
So there are 2 that I know of.
Okay.
There's that 6-inch line, which is in the corner of the property near Cornicello, up at the sidewalk. The other supposed line is mentioned. I couldn't see it when we walked the site. I looked for it. It is a 1-inch copper line, and it is at the east, toward the east end of the property.
A water line, though?
A water line.
Okay.
Yes. Assumed to be a water line. I don't know what it is, but it's assumed to be a water line.
Right, I thought I read about that. So we don't know that will require further investigation?
I believe it does require further investigation to know, if should we want it, should we don't want it, we're going to be covering it up. If we cover it up, do we keep track of that ball? If we cover it up, we just need to mark where it is, that sort of thing. So,
I have a question.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Just looking forward, if we want to provide a water station for filling your,
Water
hydro
bottle.
flask, is that a source for that?
It's potentially a source, and that's part of my thinking. And if it's not attached anymore, or if it's cut off at the main, or I don't know what, that's important for us to know. But it's a potentially developable source.
Right.
Yeah.
Steve, is that when you say east? How close to Cornicello is it?
The other direction. I'm so sorry.
West?
West. Yeah, I said east. I meant west.
Okay, so it's by Cornicello.
It's my right hand.
Chocolatier.
Yeah, it's by the chocolate. It's my right hand.
So where in this picture are you thinking it's at?
It's to the.
In the pit?
Right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the reason I was asking was because if it was further east, Elliot owns that strip up the side. I was wondering if it was in that strip, but it's not.
It's not within that strip.
Right.
No.
Okay.
And there is a strip that is a right-of-way for the benefit of both sides. Yeah. Okay. So all that is background. So I asked Jen if she might present, taking our motion from the last meeting, ask Jen if she might present 2 or 3 options, she chose 2, for how we might open up the park visually so that we can get public comment and such. And take it away, Jen.
Sure. Yeah, and so I, just as a reminder from the first meeting, I am a professional landscape architect, so I kind of design parks for a living and think about, and that's not just putting down the pavers and the plants, but we really think about outdoor open spaces as systems, the way an architect might think of a building as a system, how it functions, how it's maintained, how it works from a water flow standpoint, pedestrian flow standpoint, accessibility standpoint, and all of that stuff. So just putting it out there because a lot of people don't know what landscape architects do. And yes, actually, I'm very sorry I couldn't make it to the last meeting, but I was approached after the meeting by Suzanne, who said she's kind of been tasked with reaching out to me about, she kind of caught me up on the vote that was taken to open up the park visually, and we kind of talked for like an hour, I think, and threw around some ideas back and forth, and honestly, I think what we came up with is pretty similar to the memo that I saw from Dave Sharples, Melissa Roy, and Greg Bisson. There's really 2 options, So that's sort of, I'm a very visual person, so I sort of drew the 2 options, but they're the same 2 options, and I also sort of started to think about the considerations for each option so that we can, there's cost factors, but there's also, what Nico said about
Risk.
about risk and all of that. Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of considerations to consider.
Are you able to advance this? Or Gabe? Is Gabe listening?
No, you can.
Should I stand?
That.
Oh. Gabe is
You should
looking
have a clicker there.
looking out for us.
Oh,
Okay.
Where's the clicker?
he already is.
Okay. Gabe, I think we have the,
Gabe's doing it.
yeah, we have the, yeah, I know. We have the, okay.
Okay, well. Are you advancing?
I'm in controls.
Okay. Can you go back? Okay. So I sort of based my drawings off of 2 images just to orient everyone. Everyone's seen this image from the drone footage that we got. And actually both of the images are from the drone footage. And this one just to kind of obviously orient people, like when I say the hole, I mean that area where the hole is. Existing wood picket fence is the one along the street. Or the sidewalk, and then, we have Cornicello and the Chocolatier on either side. And then the retaining wall would be the existing Fish and Game retaining wall, which we understand we do not own. It's outside of the property bounds. So 2 options, I think, as the memo laid out and as Suzanne and I discussed are really, number 1 is to open up the site for people to actually walk on it, which requires stabilizing the site. And the second option being, let's just replace that fence in some way and allow people to have visual access to the site. So the first option, what's involved with stabilizing the site? The big thing is, you got to fill and stabilize the hole. Remove and dispose of the existing fence. So that's, the wood, the posts, and the footings. And then obviously the footings are going to leave holes. Those will have to be filled. And then at the existing retaining wall, I'm putting, install a 40 linear foot fence there.
Here, I think we want to advance this.
Oh, sorry. I'm looking at my slides. Can you advance?
Thank you, Gabe.
And that's something we can talk about. The reason, like whether or not a fence is actually required there, do we want people to be able to get to the river? Is that preventing that? Is that preventing fall risk at the retaining wall? Building code says that if you have a drop of more than 30 inches, it's a fall risk and you need some kind of guardrail, a railing there. And when it comes to landscape architecture, it's always kind of a fuzzy position because you're not going around in every park and looking for every 30-inch drop and putting a railing at the top of it. You're really looking at places where people might gather and actually have a risk of falling. So that, again, goes to the risk question of, do we need a fence there? How big of a fence is it? Do we need to go all the way across? Can you go to the next slide, Gabe? So this is just a quick visualization of what that might look like. People can actually walk down to the water's edge and stand and see the river and engage with it. And then in the back, basically, we're just getting rid of that fence. Next slide. And then this is just a brief description of the proposal. General cost, so Steve had passed around a cost estimate I had done back in, I think, December, when the town was considering accepting this site. I was asked, just as a, resident landscape architect, to, what would this cost to build a park here? So I put together a cost estimate, which was sent around, that was phase one, like stabilize the site just during the design process so that it could, be somewhat safe. And then phase two would be actually building something. We didn't really have a design, but it was just like, let's, put some numbers down for like a path to the water. And then there were some allowances and some assumptions which you can read through. But basically, so this $14,000 estimate kind of came out of that. And then, so what are the considerations of this option? I think a big one's going to be the earthwork specification. So whenever we're building a park, we, as the designers, and usually, frankly, it comes from an engineer, it comes from a geotechnical engineer, provide what's called an earthwork specification, which tells the contractor how they can move earth, how they can, if they can dispose of earth or if they have to leave it on site, whether there's any contamination in the soil, how much it needs to be compacted, and it's all based on the future use. If you're going to be putting a building here, you're going to treat the ground a lot differently than if it's just going to be a park. That earthwork specification is very important, I think. I think we say we're just going to fill the hole, but what are we going to fill the hole with? We have to specify what that material is, and we have to specify what it can't be. Like, we don't want to just take fill from, some contractor who got it off somewhere else, and we don't know what kind of seed is in it, or what kind of contamination might be in it, or whatever. We need to know what's going into it, and also just it needs to drain, it needs to be structurally stable, and all of that, and it needs to be able to support topsoil and potential vegetation or whatever we're going to put on top of it. So that it's a pretty that's something that I think that we would, if we wanted to do this, we would probably want to hire an engineer, which is not included in this cost, but we would probably want to have an earthwork specification. That's what I would recommend that we do. The second consideration is the guardrail design. If we decide, and I think that maybe Mr. Eastman can opine on this, but if we decide that a guardrail is necessary from a risk standpoint, what is the design of that guardrail? Is it a chain link fence, or is it a picket fence, or there's certain factors that go into, like, requirements for a guardrail to be considered a guardrail in terms of opening size and height and materials, and there's just a lot that goes into that. And then the last big thing, which I don't think we've talked about too much, is, this site is lined by those two easements. There are butters there. They're currently using those spaces for, you can see in this image, the previous image, there's storing some stuff there. There's some HVAC equipment there. Mm-hmm. How do they feel about having, all of a sudden, the public welcome to the sides of their buildings? I think that's a big thing. I think we need to seek a butter input if we were going to go down this route. I'm sure there's other.
Jen, if I could start off the questions.
Sure.
Option 2.
Yeah.
Does that require also filling the hole?
So that's a good question. So let me get into option 2. So option 2 would be just replacing the fence with something more visually permeable, whether it's lower. It's 78 linear foot approximately, and it's just at that point a fence, so it doesn't need to be. Well, I guess where the hole is, it would be technically a drop there, so you probably need it to comply with guardrail specifications, but it's a fence. It could be decorative, it could be very simple, it could be chain link. My concern about replacing the fence is the area that you see to the right there, where the hole is. Like, currently the posts that are there are not really secured to anything.
No, right.
There's no solid foundation. So if you did replace the fence, either you would need to fill the hole so it has some kind of structure to grip onto, or you'd need to maybe pull the fence into the sidewalk. I don't know if that would even be feasible, because I'm guessing we can't encroach on the sidewalk, but we could look at the property line and see if there's space for
The
that. So that's
sidewalk's degrading there.
It is.
right, because of all the. So I mean, with this option, it could be, fill the hole and replace the fence.
Well, Jen, would you have to have a gate on each end for those businesses to have access?
Right now, there's a gate, there's one gate, right, on one end?
Two.
Over here.
Those two.
Yeah, one on each end.
Oh, there is one on each end, okay.
Yeah.
I would assume that the abutters would require that, I mean, they have an easement to that, so.
Would they
I think
help
that we
pay?
could look at maybe reusing the existing posts, or at least some of them, to save on costs, especially if we just went with like a black vinyl chain link fence or something. You could cut those posts shorter, paint them, and then not have to have the costs of actually removing and refilling.
I'm drawing a blank. Are the existing posts metal or wood?
Metal.
They're metal.
Metal.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I don't know the cost of this. I was hoping maybe somebody could reach out to a fence company and see, like, if we decide on what type of fence we would want. Obviously, the type of fence is going to factor into the cost.
Don't you have visuals there for
And then,
types of fence?
sorry. Can you go to the next slide? I'm advancing on my screen, assuming you guys are seeing what I'm seeing. And then, can the existing post be reused is another consideration, and just what is the fence? So if we go to the next slide. One thing Suzanne and I talked
slide.
about is what are the fence options? Gabe, could you go to the next slide? Thank you. And, fences come in many shapes and sizes. These are just some 4 ideas to kind of get thinking about it. But I mean, the most common thing you see in a public park setting where you don't want to spend a lot of money is a black vinyl coated chain link fence. It sort of recedes visually and is very simple. And if we made it, 48 inches tall, most adults can see over it, which is kind of nice. We could go a little bit more expensive with an aluminum picket. They tend to be actually a little less durable than a black vinyl coated chain link fence. It's kind of easy to bend those bars. We see them in more residential applications. The welded wire mesh example I like to use as kind of a nice in between, because it's not chain link. It doesn't have that like kind of institutional vibe of chain link, but it's still not like quite as like formal as the picket fence. And then, we could do something fun. Like, we're thinking this is temporary. It won't be there forever. We only need it there for a few years, or however long it takes us to design this. So like we could, hire a local craftsman to build something cool with wood and
Paint
make it really artistic or something. I mean, personally, I don't necessarily want this to turn into the design project. Like, I think we have a bigger task, but it's something.
Are those
to throw out
holes?
there.
They're peepholes.
For all,
This was
That
she
wasn't
said.
my favorite of the ones I said.
So
It
we're
was
gonna
just an
need,
example.
we'll need one for dogs.
I see one for dogs down there at the bottom.
Well, when I was looking at this concept of how people could see the park without going into the park.
It would
And
be
that was
fun.
just one of the things that came up, but,
We could do that with the existing fence too.
well, that's what I was thinking.
Take a
If we
chainsaw,
really
cut
don't want to
along
spend
the
any
top.
money, spray
Like-
paint the fence, get a
Done
jigsaw.
15
and
minutes.
Put holes in it. And then my feeling is that if we did this option 2, we can use that platform for a container, for surveys, for signage. If you want to do a gaudy, thermometer about fundraising, like, you can put it there. You can,
Right, so Jen, is it okay to interrupt now? Or
Yeah, I think I'm done.
Okay, so your first image of option number 2, Gabe, if you go back slowly so that there's that, keep going back, there, that's it, temporary intervention. So there's a zigzag on the east, I got this straight this time, the east end, which is, just to my eye, larger than the right-of-way. Maybe it's the size of the right-of-way, maybe you meant it, but it looks larger than the right-of-way, which is 6 feet wide. And that's a potential option for, or larger, could be larger, for that space for people to step into, off the sidewalk, and into the park, and then we could have some signage there.
It's like a bump out.
A bump out.
It's a little bit, yeah, it's existing.
It's
That's kind
existing.
of why it's drawn.
Is that existing right
It
now?
is, yeah.
Oh,
That's how it is.
I regret not understanding.
Yeah. So-
It's not paved currently, so there is a little it's just grass.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit, it wouldn't be considered an accessible thing unless we paved it or put decking there or something.
So I think it's important at this point to field questions.
Hi.
Yeah.
I have one.
So let's line up. Do other people
Devin,
have
you have a question?
Do you have questions?
Not
Questions?
yet.
Okay, so my question is, I'm glad to see this plan view. I would like to see a bump out, like on the highway where there's a viewpoint you can pull out, that concept. Maybe with a drinking fountain there, who knows?
So you're in favor of option 2?
Yes, but I don't like the location of the proposal because there's not a clear line of sight that's wide enough. I would prefer to see it more toward the middle so that there's a better line of sight to the river and across to the park. If you draw straight, from the left-hand-most side, you could hardly see anything.
It's not a large area.
And
Is
from
there a
the
laser on the?
and from the corner, could you do a vertical line from the
Why don't you give
corner?
her the pointer? Yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, there we are.
From
You
the
don't have to-
corner of your inset, the other corner, straight down at a right angle, kind of. You won't be able to see the,
Oh.
yeah, I won't elaborate. It's just that I would prefer to see the, for lack of a better term, the bump out be further. Are we calling the left east and the right west?
That's roughly correct. Yeah.
I would prefer to see it more toward the center.
So you want this line moved this way?
Yeah, so not the whole distance, about the same distance. And it doesn't have to be rectilinear, it could be, an arc. Just because of the line of sight on the existing proposal. I don't think it's a good line of sight.
I have some
I have
thoughts.
a question about how this point would be financed.
All right?
Yeah, go ahead, Judy.
Okay, so Judy, you first, and then
Sorry.
you're next, and then other comments later.
Yeah.
Okay.
How would this particular effort be financed? Anything we do at this point?
Mr. Select Board Member. Yes. We're this committee to make a recommendation, and the Select Board, would it be true that we would compile what we know could be donations?
Even backing up from that, I don't want to put the solution before the horse. What funding pools, if any, would exist for any proposals we would recommend?
All right.
You're not going to like my answer, but it all depends.
Okay, so now go ahead.
No, but let me explain. If there's something that that's sort of low-key, inexpensive, that we could find funds in assorted budgets this year, that's one thing, if it's there. Something more expensive, you'd have to consider putting in the budget for next year. Certainly, if there are donations, the Select Board can accept donations at any time. So those are the three sort of scenarios there.
So it's possible that we could put together a quick budget and, put together our estimate of what donations would be required and what town funds would be required.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just like for instance, when this first came before the board early this year, we had talked about finding some funding perhaps in the Park and Rec budget for the fencing, that sort of thing. So something quick like that, I'm sure if we did a deep dive, of course, it's now later in the year, so money's been spent, but it's certainly something we could investigate. But something a little bigger, then it'd have to go through the budget process. But again, donations can always be accepted.
And just to remind us, the fiscal year for the town is?
Fiscal year is 1/1. However, the budget process begins, it's already beginning. I think budgets are due this week. Town manager will present a draft budget to the select board on September 30th, to the Budget Recommendations Committee on October 2nd. The Budget Recommendations Committee starts their vetting process through the end of November, and it comes back before the board. In early December, the board vets the budget, massages the budget, gets public input at select board meetings from folks that want to speak to the budget. And then ultimately, the budget hearing is the third Tuesday in January. And that's when the board votes to recommend the budget and warrant articles, and then deliberative session the first Saturday in February, and ultimately the election second week in March.
Yeah. So that was just a quick review. Getting back to...
I have a money question.
Amanda was next.
okay.
Amanda?
I feel like what I had to say is no longer relevant, but I just really wanted to focus in on what the point of today was, which felt like, are we trying to go with option 1, option 2, or a different option? I don't think that Jen's was a proposal. I think she was just making some basic lines of what was already there. It was not a design by her by any means, and I don't think even if we picked option 2, we're designing it today. So I think I just wanted to get back to, are we picking option 1 or option 2?
Yeah. I think,
Sorry.
Okay. Yes.
But
Yeah.
Apologize for
going
that.
all-
Yeah. Don't apologize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Jen, did you want to respond?
no, I just wanted to, I completely agree. I
Okay.
think we need to kind of hone in on an option and then dive in a little bit more.
Yes.
And
Okay.
then my opinion on the options is, I like option 2, as long as it's whatever gets the most public engagement, I think, and the most public engagement the fastest. It helps us get to our, whatever our input mechanism might be. I'm not going to use the word survey because I might think that differently than other people, but whatever that input mechanism is, should be ready, boom, to go as soon as construction is happening, because as soon as there's activity, there's going to be talk, and we got to capitalize on that talk with something, even if it's nitty gritty and down and dirty, get people's opinions. And I think, if that includes painting the fence, I thought was a really cool idea. If we're going to get eyes on it, right, just something loud, then you spend less money on something because you're just trying to get eyes on it, input on it, get moving.
Okay. Thank you.
And that led to my question, what's our financing for this? And if it's coming out of somebody's current budget, as a member of the Budget Recommendation Committee, I would recommend we pick the thing that is cheapest and safest that gets the job done, using the metal posts that exist, whether the wood is a great idea, but can that be done simply? But just putting up the vinyl chain link fence, that could be done to be safe and provide a viewing space for people with very little effort, it would seem.
Other comments?
Yes.
Yeah.
The easements and the actual property, are they easements or property? Of the two abutters?
The deed, I believe, says that they are alleyways for the benefit of both landholders. So
Okay.
in this case, the town and
Okay,
the landholder for.
So I guess whether they're owned by the abutters or they're owned by the town affects this question. Can we get them to pay for the gates? Because the gates are just as expensive as 16 feet of fence.
No.
Well, yeah, the owner of one on the left gave us the whole thing, so we probably shouldn't push our luck.
And they've also.
Elliot Berkowitz owns the building next door, and he's the one who donated the property.
And-
Right.
And Jen.
We're gonna ask for more?
Jen had kind of asked a question before about, the feelings of the abutting properties as far as fence goes and coming up to their buildings, and both of them are fine with it.
Uh-huh.
Oh, great.
That's not an issue.
Okay.
But they'll need a gate.
I've spoken to both of them.
Okay.
Yeah, they just want gates down at the bottom by the river.
Oh,
Access.
okay.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense.
If it was to be option one.
So,
Gates, I'm sorry, can you clarify what you mean
Yeah,
by that?
really.
Gates at the bottom by the river?
If we were
Yeah,
to
by
go
the
with
option one, they want gates so they can have access to the very riverside of the
Oh,
building
okay.
as well.
Yeah, no, and honestly, if you go back to option one, that fence is just at the retaining wall.
Right.
It wouldn't even, you wouldn't need gates.
Yeah, so Dave and I were there with Greg when we got an estimate for that fence as illustrated there. And it was $5,300, and that was for the nicer fence, Suzanne, with the pickets, right? But as you had mentioned, that's not quite as rugged as a chain link black fence for that purpose. And that would include a gate on each side for the butters. So that's $5,300 for the nicer fence and cheaper for the black chain link.
and would that fence go all the way across? I'm asking this question
It
knowing the
does.
answer.
The only access to the river from that fence would be through those gates.
they'd still need gates at the upper end.
So
Well,
in
if that
option
option,
one,
that would be there would be no fence.
they would be filled, yeah, option one is, you
okay, I meant
fill and you.
Back to option two.
Yeah.
They would
yeah.
need gates at both ends.
No.
north and south?
No, actually, option two would just
Yeah,
not
we wouldn't
require.
be putting that fence down with option two.
We wouldn't be putting this fence down. We wouldn't require any gates.
Really?
Both have access from
Just the
the
top.
riverside.
You need a gate there and a gate.
It's pretty steep from the riverside if they're cranking a handcart full of whatever.
Sounds like we need to interview
Yeah.
our abutters.
Yep.
You did.
But he
I've
did.
spoken to both of them.
And
They have no issue with the fencing running up to their buildings.
Do they want gates
They do.
on the sidewalk?
No.
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 Really?
The river.
Well, no, they want,
Access.
they want access to what they have right now.
So if you put a-
If we do a fence down below, there's gonna have to be a gate on either end. If we do a fence by the sidewalk, there's gonna have to be a gate.
That's
on
my
either end.
question.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
yes.
All right.
So I mean, I would be an advocate of spending the money once. So putting a new fence up top with the idea that you had said you need to put some fill in there anyway to support that fence. You know, seems like the first option from a long-term cost would be better. You put the fence up, fill it in, and you take the fence down, and you deal with that once.
So question,
Yes?
the sidewalk is the town's sidewalk and it's being undermined and somebody from the town said it's going to need to be fixed soon. So that's going to have some bearing on the point that Jen brought up, that if we put a fence in for that stretch, it's going to have to be repaired first. So I just thought I'd bring that up. I don't know if that's on schedule or not, to have that sidewalk repaired before winter.
Dave, do you have any input there?
The sidewalk's not in any jeopardy.
I haven't heard anything from DPW about that.
Okay.
I can check with them,
Okay.
find out.
It might have been Greg who mentioned it when
It's
we
just
were.
the fence it's the fence that's the problem. The sidewalk integrity
Well,
is fine.
the sidewalk, at the moment, the integrity is fine, but it has been eroding.
And it's undermined.
A little bit
Yeah.
so far. And, it could stabilize the way it is, but if it were to continue, then you start to jeopardize the sidewalk, yeah.
I have a question, but it looked like you were going to say something.
I want a clarification. So in your opinion, option one or option two, we need to fill the hole. We should fill the hole, and if we're gonna fill the hole, we need the earthwork spent.
I don't know that. I mean, I don't know if there's a way to get a fence post out there. It's basically, this,
Right.
3 fence posts here that, I don't know. I mean, maybe a fencing guy can figure out how, or gal, can figure out how to get a fence in there without filling the hole. Which I think would be preferable, because again, back to the filling the hole opens up a whole can of worms, but.
Although, how about instead of spending the money, kind of go back to Keith's idea, see if there's a way of stabilizing the fence that's already there by the hole, and make the entire fence solid without putting a ton of money into anything, lower the height of the fence, and then paint it up, decoratively. And then we haven't sunk a bunch of money in that we're just gonna be ripping out later.
Yeah, so if you look at that fence, it's metal poles, right? 8 feet. And then there's a metal pole that runs along about chest level. And then another metal pole that runs about, between the shin level, okay? So the 2 poles running this way
Right.
hold up the slats, okay? So if you cut the top along the metal pole running this way, a lot of people would be able to see over it. Kids would have to be held up. Problem is, if you cut a hole for like a kid to look through in that scenario, then you would destabilize between the top and bottom on those particular pickets. So you have to kind of carefully look at that. I mean,
And it's not a typical picket fence. Like,
right, it's staggered.
Double,
Staggered, yeah, it's back and forth, back and
back
forth,
and
so you
forth,
sort of
back
see
and
through the slats.
Yeah.
But you could really take a chainsaw and cut along the top pole, just zzz along. And then you,
Is the wood in good enough condition?
That was really, that gets at one of my critical questions is, I'm not a fence expert, because like right now, I am really, right now I'm leaning towards recommending option 2, doing something to preserve the existing fence in a way that allows us to, to show the park more, to allow for the public input. But my question was really about the integrity of the fence.
Well, I think we'd have to go down there and take a look at it and see if there's a way to reinforce the posts that are weaker, and basically evaluate the condition of the fence.
Right, yeah.
What it would take to stabilize it and to do that work, whether it would lend itself to it. So I'd
Yeah.
have to take a look at it. I'm sure Keith would be happy to take a look at it.
yeah, I mean, you can take a similar post and drive it into the earth that's below and attach it with some buckles to the existing post. So you got a long post that you put down in 3 feet or whatever, and then you attach it with some buckles to the base of the one that's sitting there, and just have a couple of dudes push it straight, and then secure it, reach it up, gold. So it can all be done. It's just but that's the cheaper way, right? You buy the post and you buy a couple of horseshoe type buckles, put them on there, reef them down, and you're good on those. You could do that for probably $100.
And it also gets it moving.
Yeah, and then you could go along and cut the top. That's secure. Cut the whole top, and then most people over 5 feet should be able to see it. You'll be able to look down and see. But to your point, Mary, the view from up there, it doesn't give you that scope of the river.
You mean tucked into the?
Yeah, I mean, you just don't see the whole. Because the slope is down, and then you have the wall, and there's a big drop off at the end. Of the
Right,
wall.
you can't see
You don't
the
see the actual water very well from the sidewalk.
Right, but you can
In
see
order to get a
the,
great view, you need to get down into the land.
correct. But you can see the park from a better vantage point if the,
Yes.
and there's a connection to that Founder's Park.
And I had a question in terms of the fence integrity. If it is cut down at a little lower level, if somebody's holding up a kid and they fall into the fence, could the current fence hold that person up? Is it safe enough?
That's what we have to investigate.
Right, that sounds like a recommendation we have to make.
So I gave it a good
action item.
shove, just, a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago. And the answer is, yeah, it'll hold you. You know what I mean? You could drive a car through it for sure, but you can't knock it. You know,
It does need reinforcement.
It does, yeah, but you can't I don't think us four dudes could cruise over there and knock it over. I don't. Right now,
interesting.
I don't think. I mean, it's not like that. You know what I mean? Although you're a large lad, you might.
Get a running start.
Okay.
Running start, yeah.
So what I hear,
We need that analysis.
what I hear
Yes.
is that folks are interested in something like option 2.
Yes.
That we need some more investigation,
Yeah.
and that we need simultaneously to prepare a bit of a budget, and on that option 2, because if we're going to present this to the select board, they're going to want details, and along with that, we need to investigate. Would we replace the fence or keep the existing fence? So perhaps there's some sub-options, A and B, replacement of the fence per se, maybe keep the posts.
Well, maybe for now, just decide where we're going to go with the concept of option 2.
Yep.
Yes.
And then we will decide
Yep.
how we're going to accomplish it.
Yeah,
Yes.
so that's the sense I'm getting.
Dave has a comment.
Yeah.
Dave?
Well, I was just going to offer, I mean, I can think of probably 7 or 8 different ways to accomplish option 2 with an existing fence, a new fence, a hybrid, support in one plot. I mean, I got 8 ideas that could work. So I could come back if the committee wants option 2. I could come out and work with maybe whoever if someone and sketch out these different options. So you'll have a menu of options that are all, and I could probably get pricing on them as well.
Neat.
Dave, how long would you require to do that?
Next meeting.
Our folks, is it the sense of
Could
the
you
committee?
also talk to somebody about whether those posts could be stabilized in this current
Oh yeah.
condition? I
Oh,
think
that's
my
because I
big
can see
question
you could stabilize, like one option, stabilize that half and then drop the fence down and and have the viewing area. It doesn't need to be all the way. It could be all the way, but you have to look at it. There's ballast fence options. I'm putting a ballast fence in right now. That doesn't go into the ground. Is there an option there? Because there is some distance between the edge of the sidewalk and that fence. There is a little bit, and there's some ground. It varies, where you are, but I guess I'll look at all the options, and I can come back with multiple. And if anyone thinks of something else, then we can have that discussion. But I think I could present you with options that you'll be able to pick one
Before
a month.
No,
Yeah,
before,
in a month.
Actually, that's not what I was going to say.
Oh.
Before I make a motion to try to get this moving, are there folks who are interested in being involved with Dave Sharpless?
Always.
Yes. And
Sure.
You?
Yeah. All right. Oh, okay. Let's just.
It's not a quorum.
Right.
Suzanne.
So Suzanne and Keith.
Suzanne is an alternate. Does she count for quorum?
She counts.
Yeah, counts, but
Can she can be volunteering as
So
a.
that's
She
two.
volunteered.
Two's
I
fine.
can
Yeah.
run a.
I can work with 2.
So
Here, I want to just,
Come up with the.
I want to clarify that in the considerations that are in my mind for producing the menu of options is this notion that what we're trying to do with creating visibility is invite public input, which means that, I think we might want to preserve the chance in some of those options of putting something on the fence.
Yeah.
Right? We want to preserve the option of increasing visibility, perhaps by doing some things to a fence so that we lower what the top height is. But I think also if we can think creatively about creating sight lines for kids, I think that is encouraging. As a parent of kids one of whom is vertically challenged right now, she would, like, when she comes by, she wants to be able to participate. I think that's going to help encourage some diverse kinds of participation.
Someone in a wheelchair?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
Yes, thank you for bringing that
one or
up.
more options would include visibility from the ground.
Yeah.
Just a chunk of
Yeah, like a chain link. I mean, that,
Right.
it's visible to all. So there'll be options that satisfy pretty much everything. Like,
Cool.
So,
Was it?
Keith, Dave, I got Suzanne.
I do not have to be.
Oh, you don't have?
I
Of
said I
course you do.
would, but
Yeah. You want to be involved.
She
I
does.
want to voice my opinion.
Very good. And since she's not a member of the committee, I believe that means that
she is a member.
She's a
she's
member.
She's a member.
She's an alternate.
Yeah.
Okay.
a member.
Okay.
Yep,
Counts. You count
Counts.
always. So number 2 would be
Yeah, it can be
I-
3, because she counts as a quorum.
okay.
She counts as a quorum.
Okay.
But we're fine with that number.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're good with that.
Yeah.
So the
Fine
3
with
of
you.
you.
she'll-
I'm just trying to figure out who is doing what and when. So you,
Keith?
Keith, Dave, and Suzanne.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Okay.
Good.
All right. Excellent.
Do you want to have a formal
I have a
motion?
question
Support
for
of
Jen.
option 2.
So, the town has a huge pile of unfiltered sand at the transfer station.
Yeah.
It's probably 50 feet high. And I was told that's the ideal fill for that spot. And that, of course, would be free. And perhaps we could even use a town truck and the town loader that's sitting next to said pile to transport that. So, how do we tell if that's, who can tell us by looking at that, saying, hey, this is the right stuff?
The
Exactly.
engineer.
Like, I had Johnny Bell tell me that was the right stuff. I trust his judgment, but
If John Bell says it's what we
yeah, he
wanna
said it's the
use,
exact right stuff. So that's
there's
free,
no-
right?
For
There's
what?
nobody,
Who's,
Like,
To fill in the hole.
Fill the hole.
but for what's going on top of the hole?
Right.
The loam that's sitting next to it, it's also free.
Right, so you're assuming that we're just gonna fill it and put loam and seed on it and call it a day, and we're never gonna wanna put a structure on it or anything like
Yeah.
that?
Well,
Like, we don't know what it's gonna be.
No,
yet,
that's
so-
not what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm saying that if, why would we put a structure on it? Is that what you want, is that what you?
no, but we don't know. I
We
think
don't know.
we're
I
just
mean,
preserving the
there might
options
be a gate,
because
there might be a fence, there might be an arbor,
Shed.
like, we haven't designed
Yeah.
the park yet.
there
Like,
might be kids who want to jump up and down on it.
Or play
I wouldn't.
like a rock,
Right, paved.
jump up and down on.
Signage.
Right. We haven't made, we haven't,
Or charging
as a committee, we
stations.
haven't.
I'm just
made
trying to save money here, that's all I'm saying, right?
I guess what I'm saying is it's not a yes or, like, I can't say, yes, sand,
let's-
filtered sand is
Yeah, whether we make the
proper,
decision
let's-
now or in 6
let's
months.
stay
Doesn't-
focused
yeah.
on,
Yeah.
we're
I
gonna
can
go,
send
we're gonna go with
you
option
option
2.
two.
A sample.
Dave Sharples,
Earthwork
is gonna
specification, and you can
work
see all
with
of the
us
different
on
factors
Right.
that have to go into it.
what we can do.
that have to be
Okay.
considered. It's
Thank
not
you.
just.
So I'll make a
perfect
motion.
gradation of
all
the
right,
site.
I'd like to make a motion then, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
Yes, please.
That we adopt option 2 as our goal, and over the coming month, Dave Sharples, Keith, Suzanne, and myself will examine what we have there, and then come back to the committee with recommendations and options at the next meeting.
Sounds good.
Second that?
Okay. Discussion.
Yes. I would like to detail that a little bit. I've got to keep it straight. The existing condition of the fence, is it repairable? And what would it cost to fix it up the way we've been dreaming? And then a cost estimate from a fence builder on 2 different versions of the fence that Jen showed, a
Well, I
chain
think, I
link.
think what I said kind of encompassed all that.
Because Dave
Yeah.
said.
It does those
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
things?
Yeah.
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 I'll
Okay,
have pricing, I'll have different options.
okay. And then my other one was, at some point soon, I think we should get an estimate on what it costs to get an analysis of the bearing, draining, et cetera, capacity of
Yeah.
that soil.
Yeah.
And I think we should start looking and shopping.
We're in the middle of a motion. Can we
Yeah.
finish
Yes.
the motion?
Okay.
Finish that
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So there was a motion, and I heard a second. I second.
A second?
Yeah. Is there any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? So moved.
And as Amanda says, we should have the survey ready to go and
Well,
Well,
that,
when,
So,
when we
Nico,
do that fence.
if we decide that that's fence is safe with being cut the top foot off of it, can we do that? Can we just do that? I mean, if we go down there and say, okay, this is all held together tight, and can we make it so people can look over it, tomorrow morning? Or we have to wait another month, or I'm asking?
oh, that's great. I see your point, right?
No.
Yeah, we would want to be able to.
So at your next meeting, if you all collectively decide to go with an option, well, the answer is no. The next morning, you can't go down and cut it off, but you'd come before the board with the select board with your recommendation, and we would approve it or not approve it.
this is an advisory committee. Yeah.
No, I understand
Yeah.
that.
What's the timing? We have our meeting on the 19th, and the select board is when, and then
Right.
our on-site crew is going to check it out between now and,
Yeah.
so.
So the select board's not in the habit of holding things up. We try to move things quickly as possible. Today I sat with the executive team and set the agendas for the next 3 meetings through September. But, depending upon what you come up with, the next meeting would be September 30th.
Oh, okay.
And then if that, we already got a pretty full agenda for that one, but let's see what you've come up with. But then the next meeting would be October, whatever the Tuesday is after the holiday.
Is it possible to reserve a space on the 30th?
To be determined, but certainly by the first meeting in October.
Okay. And which is?
It's the Tuesday.
October 1st?
It's after the holiday. No, it's every other.
The 15.
October.
Oh, that's November. Halloween. It's in October.
Like Columbus Day.
Oh,
Or
Columbus
Independence Day.
So that would give the site visiting inspection
October
crew
15th.
time and with Dave, to get the info and report back at our September meeting. And then as a group, we would discuss it
So it'd
Vote.
be October 15th, you think?
and vote whether to advance it to the
If I
select
can't do it
board.
on the 30th, if we can't do it on the 30th, then October 15th.
Oh,
I think with whatever we come up with, once we've made a decision, I think it'll be a pretty short agenda item.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And I'm not going to say no to the 30th, but I know what we've already got on the 30th. It's
Yeah.
going to be a long night.
Yeah.
So by the 15th of October.
Right.
So, because then I want to, and following up, because Keith, I appreciate the way that you asked that, because it informed my thinking. Like, what we want to do is figure out the timeline to be able to act as soon as possible. So if this committee comes together in September at our meeting, we review the evaluation of this fence integrity. We review options to consider for the fence, and then we vote on a recommendation. Then once the select board, let's say it's the 15th of October, once the select board formally votes on our recommendation, on October 16th, can we cut the fence? Because that's what we're trying to shorten here, is how many steps to...
It's going to, I'm going to answer the question this way. Whatever you recommend, you may not recommend to cut the fence. You may recommend to do something else. So,
Right.
The other good reason to maybe wait for the 15th is that, whatever it is that you decide, if it's something we have to reach out to Primex, and one of the reasons why committees have select board reps here is because we're here to listen to what you are working on. So if there's anything that we need to go to Primex rather than have you make a recommendation, come before the board on the 15th, and we say, well, we got to go talk to the insurer. I mean, that's something I can be doing with the executive team, which is the town manager, assistant town manager, and finance director. So any of these outstanding questions that you may have in September, I can try to get those answers for when you come before the select board so that we're not wasting time. So, I'm not going to say that you can cut the fence down on October 16th because you may not want to cut the fence down.
Right,
So,
right. I think that's like a
how I'm gonna
straw
answer that
person
question.
for whatever kinds of, I would describe them as like whatever kinds of like reasonable, limited recommendations that we make, which then makes me think, do we also want to can we talk to someone about whether there would be any Parks and Rec budget available if we had in our recommendation? Okay.
Cool.
Okay, sorry. Over here.
So you see, my point, and forgive me, we're 2 months out from doing anything based on that information you just presented. I mean, doing any physical anything. So that to me is an eternity. That's just my opinion. I apologize.
I think, Keith, the one thing about 2 months is that I do think that if we can capitalize on doing it right and having the public engagement at the same time, instead of doing it and then letting that energy peter out before we have the public engagement thing ready, so that we can get as much of that energy into the survey, whatever it might be. I think that's one positive. So I think we should, as a committee, should get that done in 2 months if 2 months is our, you know what I mean? I think it just puts a fire under us to get that over with more quickly.
Yeah, there's other things we can be doing. in the
Right.
future.
That way it's ready to go whenever the construction happens. Because when people see it happening, they're going to have opinions.
Oh, yeah.
You make a good point.
So-
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yes?
But I like to move quick too.
I know this about you.
Regarding Amanda's decision, we've got 7 ponies in the race, and one of them is this get onto the public opinion very quickly. So I would propose that an agenda item for our September meeting be what would soliciting public input look like, so that I'd like to see it more developed before then, maybe a couple different ideas that people could bring. I'd
So
like to see a sign.
Is this under other business?
This is an agenda item for our next,
Right.
I guess it is.
Yeah.
Or would it be summary of sense of the committee?
Yeah, it is other business. Okay.
Yeah,
It is
I'm
other
sorry.
business. Yeah.
So it would be to come to the meeting, a couple of everybody with ideas on how to approach the public. And I'm going to suggest some kind of instrument. I don't know whether it's published or mailed to everybody. Dave is the guru on that. But also, I think it was Keith early on suggested a suggestion box on site. I think we could do a waterproof suggestion box.
So,
Just an idea.
would it be acceptable if we assigned 2 people to come up with survey and public input suggestions to propose at the next meeting?
I'll help with that.
Okay? You'll help with that?
I want to help with that.
Okay.
Too.
Yeah, you got,
I went and sat with them.
Ann, did you want to be in there?
I've already got my questions all written out.
No idea.
So I think that it would be best if you were involved.
Yes.
Okay, so Ann, Amanda, and Deb. Okay. I don't require a motion on that point.
I just want to add, that shouldn't preclude other people coming to the meeting with their own ideas, but this way, no?
For 91A it does, but maybe it could email directly to the chair, and the chair could give us a list or something. But yeah,
Thank
definitely
you.
could come to the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want a quorum at the meeting, and we don't want following up. Yeah.
Right, okay, all right.
So no, this would be a select group that will come back to us.
Okay,
Yeah.
right,
and it's Ann, Devin, and Amanda.
yes. And if other people have ideas, email them.
Yes.
To the chair.
Yeah,
To the chair.
And to the chair, and I'll send them to you.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have ideas, send them to me, and I'll send them to them. Perfect. And I will be the clearinghouse. I don't believe we need a motion for that. Yes? No. But that's a topic for the agenda, and we have a plan. Dave?
I just wanted to add earlier to that discussion about October 15th and the 16th. I know we've passed it, but it's just once the select board authorizes us to do something, or staff to do something, or, then we have a purchasing policy we have to follow.
Yeah,
If it includes any consultant or spending. It's not like you at home or me at home, I can just call up a fence guy and, hey, Joe, get over here tomorrow and pay him. That's not how it works in government, because it's taxpayer dollars. So we have to follow a purchasing policy. We have to go out, depending on what level it is. If it's, up to $500, it's this. If it's $500 to $3,000, it's this. If it's different layers, so we at least have to get 3 probably written quotes for this and so forth. So those take time. So just know that. I mean, if it's volunteers or we get money, donations, then it's different. But if we're using taxpayer dollars, it's always going to add a few weeks to that process. Right.
Yeah, and as a budget person, I'm always concerned about where these pools of money are in different departments. So we want to keep our ask low so it fits nicely in somebody's budget.
Yeah, well, and Dave had said if you can, when you're devising those options, if you can present some rough budget estimates to those things.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to do that, but then we don't spend a lot of time as staff going and getting quotes from folks until the select board authorizes us to do it. Because if you go and then the select board says no, then we've wasted a lot of time doing something that we don't need to do. So we usually wait for the select board to authorize it. Then we go out and we start soliciting quotes and get a low bid and apples to apples and so forth. So that just takes a couple weeks after that, usually on that process. Well, it can take a lot longer on big projects, but this one would be a couple weeks.
Suzanne?
I just wanted to point out that once we get into October, we're looking at totally different weather from being outside, and if we're trying to raise money for an outdoor space and we want people to be enthusiastic about it, that moving as quickly as possible. In that the weather is going to change is important.
So sad, so true. Is there any other business before this committee?
Steve, can you hear me?
Yeah. Yes.
Steve?
Who are you? And
Bill Campbell.
Bill.
I had my hand up for a while, but
I'm so sorry, Bill. I am ignorant of this.
I've been here since about 5:10. The problem was logging on with Zoom. I won't bore you with the details, but it is not easy. At any rate, I've been here, so you can record it in the minutes if you want.
Will do.
Okay.
Yes.
See you next meeting.
No, he just.
So Bill will. He says that he will tell us next meeting, if appropriate, if we have time on the agenda, an update on the Historical Society research that he has done. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.
Yay.
Excellent.
Who moved and who seconded it?
It doesn't need to be.
Don't need it. Robert's will say no.
He's got the hammer.
I got the hammer.
If I had a hammer.
Thank you for tuning in to Exeter TV. Exeter TV is the town's public and government access channels, available on Comcast Channels 6 and 22. Channel 6 is your channel. If you have an idea for a program, want to host your own talk show, or submit a film, we're here to get your content on television. On Channel 22, we bring you live and replay coverage of government meetings